Hi everybody, Nick Blazer here with another position analysis video for you. As I've said before, I'll be doing these every Monday and Thursday, so watch out for more of them. Please subscribe to the channel if you like seeing content like this. I've got interviews coming out now too. You've probably seen one of those already, or maybe a couple of them. I don't know. But yeah, I'm trying to like grow the audience of that and have maybe more options for streaming in the future and things like that. Um, Getting out, showing that there's a community of people interested in backgammon stuff on YouTube, I think really creates a lot of options for us for trying to create more content of this sort, more chances for sponsors to get involved in everything going on in backgammon. So, yeah, I mean, however you feel like being involved in supporting this, I think subscribing to the channel and liking the videos would help me out a lot and hopefully help me get to that goal. And yeah, check out my book and everything else. I've got lots of news on the website. And yeah, without further ado, I want to get into this position, which will be a bit of a time paradox here because this video I think will come out before my interview with Simon Barjett, where we talked about it a little bit. But he mentioned a position, and I asked him to send it to me afterward for one of my position analysis videos. And here we are with a 3-4 that he struggled with in the opening game here. And I'm not sure, like when you look at this position, what concepts leap out at you. And in the early game, probably we see that we can hit is a good thing, and we can make an anchor, which is a good thing. So which do we do? And very often in the early game, solidifying a racing advantage and sending another checker back, kind of as I talked about in my last video, they establish a couple of clear advantages for white here, right? So if we hit, then we're going to be well ahead in the race, and we're going to have two checkers back to our opponent's three, and a lot of things like this. On the flip side, our opponent does have a better board, but they have quite a bit better board here, though. And when we're hitting, it's only with our 1 point board, and we're going to leave a lot of like attacking and priming kind of game plan by playing loose like that and not anchoring up. So it should be a bit of a strategic dilemma. And in this case, I mean, we'll run the analysis and look at it real quick. It's quite big and clear to make the anchor here. And so Simon was saying, like, I mean, he's a stronger player than me by a decent amount, Grandmaster on BMAB and all these things. And so why was this position in the early game ever able to trip him up is kind of the question, like why is the magnitude so big here? What is it that sticks out here in this position that allows us to just passively make the anchor and play down instead of going for something with more of a clear advantage like hitting? And there's a couple features I see here, but I also want to just show kind of how you can learn from a position and test them out. And so when I look at this position, I want to look at the resulting position in each and kind of compare them to start. And I can see that for sure the value of making this 21, we mitigate the value of our opponent's 20 point quite a bit by doing this, or 5 point, I should say. They're offensive 5. Best offensive point on the board, and it's not doing much when we get right to the edge of the prime and can't be primed. We freeze the two checkers on the 6. And it's, yeah, I mean, like there's no more attacking game plan. So, so what our opponent had in this game was a board advantage, and that was their main advantage that they have. And now that board advantage doesn't matter very much. Like if there's still blot hitting that occurs, it'll help. But with an anchor, you're never too worried about that, right? So I think the main theme that I see in this position that allows us to anchor up instead of hitting is just this simple sort of McGrill criteria of who has the better board early on. And it emphasizes how important it is to make an offensive point like this because it forces your opponent into doing things like anchoring and playing passively and not hitting instead, right? It makes it so that's not a fun exchange for them where it would be otherwise. When we look at the other plays, it's almost hard to think about playing this after we hit. We have a clear dilemma. We'll look at the initial possession again of do we create an awful 6 stack or do we create another blot when outboarded and strip our midpoint in the process, right? Neither of them look very attractive, but we can look at the final after this. So this 6 stack, we do have an advantage in the race, but this third checker can very likely help our opponent anchor a little easier, and their attacking still looks very wide open, right? So while we're ahead in the race and the checker's back, it's not clear how we're going to cash in on that advantage. I think that's kind of a deep hint to this that I don't know if we want to get that deep into the position to decide between 200 errors kind of thing. Um, but but yeah, I think this is maybe a bit of how we can see in this position that the clear advantage that hitting gets us maybe isn't as clear as it usually would be, right? And so here, after the two down play, though, maybe this is surprising that it comes in significantly worse than creating a stack of six checkers. We know how bad it is to put the six checker on the 6 point, probably. Five checkers were already dying to unstack in the early game with hitting loose and things like that. And the six checker is almost unmanageable. It's just too stiff for the beginning. And it's going to be difficult to develop that checker as the game goes forward. So why is it better than down here? Well, I mean, the returns is a big piece, but also we can see when we strip our midpoint, I call this a timing issue. I don't think this is how everyone in backgammon uses the concept of timing, but what I see here is that I'm going to have not very much flexibility to bring these two back checkers around to cash in on my race when my midpoint is stripped because I don't have these extra checkers to play down with or like find random plays around. I'm going to have to roll pretty nicely to avoid leaving shots along the way, and it's going to be harder to link up to those back checkers. So this is I usually look at this more for like anchoring and running decisions, um, or running off of anchor decisions, or whether I need to anchor, or sorry, splitting decisions, I should say. I would think about coming off the 24 in a scenario like this often because I don't have time to not do that. I'm going to run out of other spares to play around with, and I need to address that problem now while I still have some flexibility elsewhere in the position. So while if we're not hit, we might make a point next roll, we're still very much out of flexibility to continue to play this position and will very soon be at risk. This is one where it's interesting to take this position probably and just play it out and see how that comes about. If you can start to get a feel for how this position gets very front loaded and stiff and awkward when we play two down like this. So, yeah, I think a big part of the issue with this play, why we need to hit or anchor instead of hitting, has to do with the formation afterward as well. Like the position doesn't really have room for it. But I think the board is a bigger part of it, and I figured that out kind of running positions afterward. But so we can test a couple of those things. So my first idea, I mean, I think the thing that Simon honed in on too is just that we're leading the race, which is another reason we can afford to do this and still be nearly winning. But I think that's actually maybe a little bit secondary, and we can do a couple things to test that out. So what if, for example, we took a checker from the 6 point and moved it back to the midpoint and put a checker back in our opponent's home board. Now we've changed a couple of the characteristics that we just talked about. We are no longer stripping the midpoint if we hit and play down. We have a little bit more flexibility. We're no longer ahead in the race. And I think those are like the two big ones. But we're still under the gun against against this better board, right? Which for a lot of times when we're outboarded, then we need to make the defensive asset and play aggressive later. And so after we fix those two things, how does it come out? Let's run the position real quick. And here, we're still better off anchoring, which I think shows to me we got very close to tipping the play. You know, we fixed a lot of the problems with the hitting play, but not enough to counteract the effect of just wanting an anchor against this made 5 point. So I feel like what I've learned here is that the primary characteristic here is indeed that our opponent has a better board and we have a worse board, and we just want to negate that. Um, so another way we could maybe test that out would be to bring these checkers back around. And what if our opponent didn't have the board and we did? Now would we want to anchor or would we want to attack? Does it look any different? We're further ahead in the race too, which would think that we could even, tend more towards playing safe. But let's see what XG says in this position. And now we don't really care that much about an anchor. It's an option in there, but really we're happy to just hit and try to run as well and take advantage. And we're way further ahead in this game too. But now that we have the better board, even though our distribution's getting a little bit sketchy after hitting from the ace, or from the midpoint. And yeah, even though we have to pass up an anchor to hit, and play up in a provocative sort of way here. With the better board, we can do all that. So sometimes these strategic concepts get kind of like easy to lose track of, and it's like I think a feature of the 5 point, especially here, the best offensive point that can lead to primes and attack formations. But it would seem here that when our opponent has a board advantage, then we need to play into that by negating it defensively somehow and proceeding from there. And when we have the offensive advantage, we want to continue that and drive it home. We don't need to play quiet here and find some way to just like win the race that we already have with our anchor. When we have a board advantage, and we can go for a little bit more. We can go for gammons and more wins, right? So yeah, I think what really drives this one home is that McGrill safe versus bold priorities and who has the better board. There's quality to a better board too, right? Like having the 5 point is a much better board. If you have the 2 point instead, it's not as much better of a board, though there are reasons that this might point to an attacking play as well. But just as you try to apply this concept over the board, something to keep in mind that, like when you're thinking about addressing board strength, how much better is the board? Having a 5 point is way better. All game plans available, very flexible and very threatening to this anchor back here. All right. I've rambled about this one enough. I think this is a really good position, though. Thank you so much, Simon Barjett, for sending this over. Hope you guys enjoy it. Please do like the videos if you enjoy them and subscribe to the channel. And I will be back with more soon. Bye, everybody.